Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are cracking open the auditor's case file. Seriously, think of it like a detective's dossier. It's packed with every single clue, every piece of evidence, and all the critical conclusions from a really high-stakes investigation. We're going to unravel the whole process of audit documentation together. So, let's just start with a question to get us in the right headspace. What if an entire company's financial health, its reputation, maybe even its future, what if all of that rested squarely on how good your notes are? That's a ton of pressure, right? Well, for an auditor, that's not some hypothetical scenario. That's the job. And this flowchart you're looking at, that's going to be our roadmap for today. It lays out the entire life of an audit file, from the moment it's created to its final resting place. Let's jump in. Okay, so let's start at square one. Why does this case file even exist in the first place? What is its actual purpose? Our roadmap starts right here with the absolute basics. This stuff, audit documentation or working papers as they're often called, it's not just about ticking a few boxes. No way. It's the official, undeniable record of the entire audit. This slide really gets to the heart of why it's so important. Think of it like this. These papers are the hard evidence that backs up the auditor's final opinion. They're the proof that the audit was planned and performed by the book. But they're also a super practical tool that helps the whole team stay on track, and down the line, they allow for quality control reviews. It's all about evidence, process, and accountability, all rolled into one. All right, we get why the file is created, but how is it done, right? What are the actual rules for putting together a record that can stand up to some serious scrutiny? So the next step on our map is all about quality. See, it's not enough to just have a record. It has to be, and this is key, sufficient and appropriate. That's a really important benchmark in the world of auditing. So what does sufficient and appropriate really mean? Well, the standard is actually pretty straightforward. Could another experienced auditor, who knows nothing about this audit, pick up this file and understand everything? Could they see the work you did, the evidence you found, and how you reached your conclusion? That's the ultimate test. So how do they build a file that strong? Well, it really comes down to three core habits. First, standardization. So everyone on the team is basically speaking the same language. Second, preparing it in a timely way. You got to document things as they happen, not weeks later when your memory is fuzzy. And finally, making sure there's enough detail, that sufficient extent, to pass that critical experienced auditor test. Okay, we've got the why and the how. Now for the really interesting part. Let's take a peek inside the case file itself. What kind of evidence and info are we actually going to find in there? Our roadmap is now taking us right here to the content. Let's pull back the cover and see how all this evidence is actually put together. Typically, the file is split into two main sections. You've got the permanent file, which is kind of like the company's long-term story. Things like major contracts or company history that stay relevant year after year. Then you have the current file, and that's the story of this year's audit, the specific plans, analyses, and financial statements. You need both to get the full picture. And after all the evidence is collected and documented, there's one last administrative step, pulling it all together into a single cohesive audit file. This becomes the complete final record of the case. But hey, signing the audit report, that is not the end of the story. For the case file, a whole new chapter is just beginning, and it's one that comes with some major responsibilities. We've now reached the final stop on our map, the file's afterlife. This part covers all the strict rules about confidentiality, how it's stored, how long it's kept, and the really critical question, who actually owns this thing? And let me tell you, the rules here are super strict. Everything inside is confidential. The file has to be kept in safe custody and retained for a legally required number of years. And here's the kicker. Ownership belongs to the auditor, not the client they audited. That means the entire burden of protecting this file rests squarely on the auditor's shoulders. Okay, we've walked through the entire process, so let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. Why does all of this meticulous, detailed work really, truly matter? It all comes down to this. Good documentation is the absolute bedrock of a quality audit. It's not just about compliance or paperwork, it's the ultimate defense of an auditor's professional judgment. When you're making tough calls, this case file is the proof that your work was sound, your evidence was solid, and your diligence was absolute. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We know the auditor physically owns the papers, but who truly owns the story that file tells? The story of a company's financial health, its integrity, and its accountability to the public. That question? Well, it gets to the very heart of what it means to be an auditor.